Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Sun Xueling, your host for tonight's webinar. Thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, which is on the impact of screen viewing on a child's health and development. Today's webinar is being co-organized by CHILD, the Center for Holistic Initiatives for Learning and Development, a research center under the Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine, NUH, NUS, and Suncare SG, a charity which is focused on the well-being of children and youth. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will share a link with you after the webinar is completed, and please feel free to share this link with your family and friends. And please feel free to also drop your comments, your feedback and questions via the Zoom Q&A chat box, which is available. And now let's warmly welcome Adjunct Associate Professor Prof Shang Chee, Deputy Director, Center for Holistic Initiatives for Learning and Development, CHILD at NUS Yong Lu Lin School of Medicine. She is also the Head and Senior Consultant at the Department of Pediatrics, Khoo Teck Puat National University Children's Medical Institute, NUH. And very importantly, Dr. Chong was co-chairing the work group on guidance on screen use in children under the Ministry of Health, which was launched in March last year. Hi, Dr. Chong.
Hi, nice to have you with me on the show, Xueling.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have received overwhelming questions tonight. Could you begin tonight's webinar by sharing with us the impact of screen viewing on children's learning, development, and their health, particularly in the context of Singapore?
Yes. I'll just like to start my slides. So here today on our show, we are going to look at the impact of screen viewing on child health and development. So thank you all for joining us today. Now, indeed, screens have become widely available, and availability, because it's been rapidly expanding, our children have access to it in their homes, and it's being given freely now to children. When we talk about screen time, we are really looking at screens as defined as tablets, smartphones, television, computers, and laptops, okay? So screen viewing does impact children's health and development. Now, because different age groups may have different ways of accessing screen media, we want to explain the common differences across the age groups, but also touch on the different age bands and the impact on the different age bands. So to engage you better, and because this is a myth versus science series, I thought we'd have a little bit of fun tonight, where we are going to look at some statements and let's decide if these are myths or not. So this is the first statement. Educational videos for infants and toddlers improve learning. We should maximize these opportunities. So is this myth or not? So one of the ways to understand this is to look at how very young children learn. And when we talk about young children, we are talking about children who are less than 18 months. So I have a video here for you. Let's take a look whether children learn from a two-dimensional screen. So on the left side, you see this very cute baby sucking on the pacifier. He is looking at the screen. The screen is a two-dimensional kind of an object. There are these pictures, which are actions: blowing, sleeping, walking, and the baby cleaning. And the baby keeps looking at it. He's looking at the lights, what's moving in front of him. He's holding the iPad, trying to flip it, tilt it, and all the while sucking on her very delicious pacifier. Now, on the right side, we want to show you how babies learn. Babies learn on a three-dimensional format, and this is a father who is trying to tell baby about certain things at home. So he's trying to tell the baby this is a car. The baby feels the car, moves the car back and forth. He hands the rattle to the baby. The baby is feeling, touching it, shakes it, and the father encourages her to do it. The father wants to teach her what she should not touch. This is a scissors, a pair of scissors. And he says, no, you should not touch the scissors. Look at what the baby's doing. So the father explains it. The baby imitates. And this is the best part. The papa shows an iPad to the baby and says, no, you should not be touching the iPad. Okay, this phenomena is actually called a video and transfer deficit. It is an important concept when you need to understand why the screen time guidance tells you 18 months and below, we shouldn't be giving children screen. They don't learn from it. And this is because children do not have the experiences yet to relate what they see on a screen to real life. There is no schema and it's not represented. Okay. So this is my next slide, which shows you people and researchers have also looked at how babies understand or do not understand what they're watching. So there was this experiment, was very interesting. Let's say we show a baby Sesame Street, but Sesame Street has its proper portion, proper version, and is another version of it is distorted. The speech is not comprehensible. So if you show both types to a very young infant, the infant cannot tell the distorted versus the real version of Sesame Street. But if you have an older toddler, 18 to 24 months, they looked at how the baby looks at the screen, and they found that the older toddlers looked longer and they understood what was actually happening on the screens better for the version that was the correct one compared to the distorted one. It tells you that children after a certain age, start to understand better what they watch on screens. And hence, if babies do not understand what they're watching, they cannot learn from it. Yeah. And this is, again, reinforcing video and transfer deficit. Okay, let's look at the second myth now. The second myth is, okay, a lot of parents say, you know, Dr. Chong, my 18 months cannot sit still. But when I give the baby the screen, he can focus for a long time. That means he can really learn from the screen because he's really focusing now. Is this myth or not? Okay, so this is very interesting. This is our local research, which is from the Gusto. The Gusto is growing up in Singapore towards healthy outcomes. It is a very large study where they recruited almost 1,000 over mothers and children, and they actually recruited them from pregnancy and tracked these babies all the way till 13 to 14 years old now. The babies are now bigger kids. One of the things they did was to examine the impact of screen viewing on babies' brains. And this is not easy to measure. So they put very young babies in this lab, and my colleague, Dr. Evelyn Law, who was on the child webinar series before, you would see that in this lab, Dr. Evelyn Law examines the brain waves of the baby through putting a net of different electrodes. There are exactly about 128 of these electrodes, which measure brain waves from the front to the back and at the sides, and different parts of the brains are in charge of different functions. And what did they see? And they actually saw that with every increase in hour of screen viewing, these theta or beta waves, which were measured by the electroencephalogram or the EEG, there was an appearance of more of the high and higher of the less alert brain waves. The less alert brain waves are the types of waves that predict if a child may have attention issues. So it is not true that viewing screens actually help to show that the baby can focus more. In fact, it actually impacts the attention of the baby and the child's brain. And why is this so? A lot of people believe that there is actually an overstimulation kind of concept where babies who are very young are overly focused on the lights, the sounds of what they're watching, and this is at the expense of the other areas which develop to help the baby control its attention and reduce distraction. And that area of the brain is very important for the baby's learning. Okay, and some more, when they actually track these babies till they were older and they administered different tests at different ages of the baby, they found that when the baby watched more screens when they were younger, by 1.5, they could actually start to measure attention deficits that were evident. And then there was some impact on the cognitive development by 4.5 years old. And also the babies had impact on the social skills. And there were social communication difficulties when they actually longitudinally follow up these kids. So yes, it is not true that more screen viewing helps to make the baby focus and learn. Okay, now this is a very hot topic. This asks if using screens to help feed the toddlers with fussy eating is a great solution. I know that a lot of parents do it. And to be honest, when I was young, I was a young mother, right? At that time, when my baby couldn't eat, I thought that this was also a possible solution because it was just so difficult to get my baby to eat. Now, I want to show you that when we actually feed babies and toddlers, what they're experiencing is we are building healthy eating habits and feeding habits. On the left side, you would see baby finger foods, the range, the variety of textures and tastes. Actually, babies need to go through a process of exploring these textures and tastes before they can develop a range of appetite to different types of food and acceptance to different types of food. So the dietitians and nutritionists will tell you this is a very important step when we are actually feeding the babies. And actually, they, through experiencing different texture and taste, and if they, during the feeding process, are exploring and feeding themselves, it also helps to build their ability to self-feed. Feeding is supposed to be interactive and enjoyable. But if we put the screen in between that step and just keep feeding the baby's watching the screen, the baby will really miss out on opportunities for learning these skills. So I want to reassure parents that all babies and toddlers go through a stage where feeding may be challenging, and this is actually very normal. But if we keep giving the screen takes away the normal developmental process. So we should really not be encouraged to do this, okay? So if the baby is fussy or difficult, what should we do? We should actually use responsive feeding methods with the baby. When the baby is feeding, like I said, it's supposed to be an interactive process. So a lot of parents bring the screens out. Actually, we did a study in our child development unit, and we found that in our patients, one of the major reasons for introducing the screen before 1 year old was to feed the child. So we probably felt that maybe there was an age appropriate expectation to sit and eat, which was not matched to what parents may think the child can do. So a very quick guide is for every 12-month-old baby, they are expected to sit for about 15 minutes, right? And up to the baby is about 18 months to 2 years old, they can probably only sit for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. We should give baby age appropriate portion sizes. They should not be using the screens to force the baby to eat more and to actually reduce the chance that the baby needs the screens to come out and feed. We must actually have healthy practices where we feed 3 main meals, give 2 snacks, and try to make the baby hungry. No milk or snacks 2 hours before. Stick to a routine. With meal times, you eat together, and anything you do with the baby, which you can sprinkle, see the finger foods in front of the baby, it should be related to feeding or to food. You can even put a little stuffed toy beside the baby, and as you are actually eating, feeding the baby's feeding himself. The baby can say she is also feeding the doll, right? So everybody is eating together. Meal times must be relaxing, and screens should not come out to replace this process. Okay, now the last myth or not is a lot of parents think, wow, all screen time must be bad. It's so bad. Oh dear, I'm so guilty now, right? I'm so guilty now, Dr. Chang. I think I've done damage to my child. Something has happened because of some of the things I did. Now, this is not true. Now, screens are here to stay. But I want to tell you that if we actually have excessive uncontrolled screen time in very young children, it seems to tilt towards the negative. Now, when we actually looked at the screen time guidelines at Ministry of Health, we also looked through lots of literature and research, and we summarized here some of the things that people have reported that can happen to children if it's excessive and uncontrolled. Children can have language delay because, remember the video I showed you, we have really taken away the opportunities for the caregiver to interact with the child, to talk to the child, let the child imitate the words and understand what they're hearing. And that feedback is important for language learning, right? Social and communication deficits. Children who watch too much of screens, they really lose out on the social interaction, social learning. As mentioned, they can have attention difficulties, and it starts to present later. And we did studies in our child development unit. We found that a lot of children with excessive screen time, they were more likely to have behavioral challenges and social emotional difficulties. With this, we are not sure whether these kinds of children, the parents could not pacify them, and hence the screens came out as an easy way to let them be satisfied, or the reverse direction is true. Because they watched too much of this, there were more behavioral challenges. And certainly if you watch a lot of violent videos, a lot of very fast action-packed kinds of shows which are not developmentally appropriate. All screen time is sedentary. There is a risk of being overweight and reduction of physical activity and outdoor time. there is eye strain and vision problems. And you know that going outdoors actually reduces myopia. So because of a reduction in outdoor time, there could be actually a higher chance of us developing vision problems. And a lot of people like to give even children screens before they go to bed. This has been found to impair sleep. It disturbs the sleep hormones. And a lot of them watch and they say 5 minutes more, 10 minutes more, and it leads to delayed bedtime. Children end up being less alert, more irritable. So in summary, what screen time does is maybe there is some impact on how the circuits in the brain are developing and it's disrupted, but quite a lot of what we study nowadays is because it replaced and displaced the other developmental appropriate activities and activities that promote health. So it's not all bad because people have also looked at how we use screens. Screens, actually, if you use it appropriately and at the appropriate age of watching, you actually can have benefits, right? For example, Sesame Street as a show has been found to improve school readiness skills. I remember watching Sesame Street. I learned my alphabets, I counted with Cookie Monster, etc. And then there are shows like in US, they have Daniel the Tiger's Neighborhood and some other very good shows. The children learn actually social, emotional skills, how to be good, what are the values. They develop empathy too, right? And emotion recognition. And in older children, actually media and screen media has been found to benefit the children's language and literacy development, okay? So I want to tell parents that on one extreme, we have health, on one extreme, we have harm. Nobody is so precise to tell us at which point on this spectrum, things start to be very harmful. But what we're trying to do is to push parents towards the green. If you keep to using screens to be intentional, you be mindful that you are using it for educational and stimulating activities with your baby, and it is controlled, you can actually benefit from screen use. But we want to highlight that the age of the child matters. Like we said, we should try not to give screens to children less than 18 months just because they really can't learn from it. And duration is only a guide, but we want to tell parents that this is a way that you can structure the whole day's activities around it, and the content and supervision is extremely important.
Thank you very much, Prof. Chong. Those were very informative slides. I think we've been looking at some questions that some parents have sent through. I think some parents would like some guidance on the duration. I think you mentioned here as a factor as well. So I think they would like to know what is the appropriate duration of screen time that is age appropriate. One parent, I think, has a 2.5-year-old toddler. So maybe you'd like to share with us, perhaps for children under 3, what is an appropriate amount of screen time?
Yes, thank you, Masun. So now I have this slide. I want to tell you that actually as a whole country, Singapore, if we didn't attend this webinar, we didn't know, what is happening is that from our Gusto research, we already found that, you see, initially we recommended, American Academy Pediatrics says any child less than 2 shouldn't be screen viewing, right? But from Gusto research, we found 81% of babies were already exposed to screens, and this went up to almost 100% by age 2. So evidently, before we came out with the guidelines, we were not following any of these guidelines at all. And not only that, 5% of those who are 1 year old were already watching more than 40 hours per week. So if you look at this, I think, Shirley, this has to also do with the way devices are designed. You see that on the right side, most of these young children are using smartphones and touch screen tablets. The convenience of it probably contributed to this phenomena as well. So if we actually look at older children, how is our country doing compared to the global average? Also, if you look here, we are giving our children first devices at 8 years old. The global average is actually 10 years old. And we have a very high internet penetration rate. In most families, everybody has about 3 devices. And if you measure children of school-going age, this is older children, we are still tanking the global average because our children get 35 hours per week of screen time and the global average is 32 hours. So the households where children are less than 15 years old, a lot of them have access to computers, smartphones, laptops, and tablets. And in this Infocom Media Development Authority survey, they asked teachers, are they worried about the students' screen habits? And this is what the teachers say, yes. There were things that they were worried about. They were worried about excessive screen time in these kids, addiction, and actually cyberbullying. So the blue bars are Singapore data, or the global average shows the orange bar. So we are actually higher. And there is a lot of attention on social media now. And look at what our children have access to, higher than the global average as well: WhatsApp, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So this tells us that parents must be mindful. And until we actually know the prevalence of the problem, we would need to start to do something about this, right? So this is what we should do. Okay, on the right side, this guidance on screen use is the one that I have done work with, and there is actually quite a lot of the recommendations written very nicely. On the left, this is something very useful, like Mosun would be asking us to pay attention to. If you look at 0 to 18 months, we should not be giving children screens at all, except for video chatting. When you video chat with somebody, usually a caregiver, grandma, the child actually can understand or recognize the person, but the parents will still interface. And you just video chat. Maybe or not, the baby understands a little bit and recognizes the person. Now, from 1.5 to 3 years, in fact, we extended it. Just remember, preschoolers 1 hour. I think that's a very practical way of remembering it. And if you give a child of a preschool age any device, you must actually watch and supervise and co-view with your child. You must select very good content for your child, and you must keep to the limits, right? And then for the school-going age, we are saying 2 hours. So it's easy: 0, 1, 2. Okay, so for the school-going age, 2 hours outside of school. And in these 2 hours, it's just practical. Nobody says 1 hour is safer than 2 hours. 5 hours is certainly a bit excessive. But we are recommending throughout these age bands, you must manage it. You must model yourself good screen habits. And everything that the child is watching should be meaningful and actually should be selected. And selective. You need to give some control to that. Otherwise, the children cannot benefit from screen viewing. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Now,
for the avoidance of doubt, right?
Yes.
We could go back to the slide previously. So for our parents who are online, babies less than 1.5 years old, 0 screen time, except for video chats, right? That's what. And then 1.5 to 6 years old, the preschoolers, you're saying 1 hour per day.
A day, sorry, yes.
I think some parents may have a heart attack with 1 hour per week. You're like, oh, I'm going to manage. Okay. And then for the primary school going children, you're saying 2 hours.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So and parents, remember that.
That's right. And more soon, I want to tell some, this is my own reflection. Children can't be, they are very active. Children cannot be left alone for too long before they come to look for you for something to do. Actually, 1 hour is pretty long. Yeah. And if you think about it, right, preschoolers don't have 1 hour where they don't start feeling bored and all that. But the very fact that they can really be looking at screens for 1 hour is a bit long already. Yeah, considering what they are really supposed to be doing. So this 1 hour is beneficial. I think we would like to recommend that it's broken up, at least maybe into 2 parts. Into half an hour and then half an hour, rather than sitting through a whole 1 hour show. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I have only 2 or 3 more things I wanted to tell parents who are dialing in. Now, screens, actually, you can teach children self-control and healthy habits around it right from the beginning when the child is young. It's very simple. On the left side, I put the iPad. On the right, I put food. Think about it as feeding your child. Okay, it's like consuming media is a consuming food. Before you feed the child, you would think, hey, what am I going to cook for my baby today? You would think about it, right? You would also think, what time should I be feeding my baby? The food I gave him today, is it nutritious or not? Is there enough fish? Do I have a little bit of carrots, vegetables? It's the same for screen viewing. It should not be different, right? You should be thinking, what time should I give? And then what should I feed my baby with on the iPad, And there is a time for it. You have a time, meal time, you have an iPad time. And after that, you just tell him, okay, time's up. Now we go and do something else. It's like eating, right? Finish. They're done with the meal, let's go and do something else. Children should always ask for permission and do not give children devices freely. And they can be scrolling and do all sorts of things on it, right? And this was what a mother actually said. It was too easy. There was peace in my pocket, but now she has no peace. Because, it was so easy. Again, think about food like chocolates or candy from pockets coming out. When the child has a tantrum, you wouldn't just be giving sweets all the time. It's the same for the device. You shouldn't be doing that. So this is a mother who was doing this a little bit too freely, and now the child had some behavioral problems around screen use. Yeah. And this is my last slide. Now, the debate is not finished. We do need to live with screens. Screens are important. We are a digital nation, and actually we need to know how to use tech. So we cannot stigmatize everything around devices. What we're trying to do is to encourage healthy screen practices. And we do need to be telling you about things which could potentially be harmful. That is our job. And we should not, at least now, give unsupervised social media to children who are less than 13 years old. That means the primary school children really shouldn't be accessing social media. And we should consider using parent control apps and features to help our children understand why we need to have some control over their screen practices. Yeah, so Mosun, I'm done with my slides.
Thank you. We've been
Yes.
receiving some questions. Some of our parents, I think, whatever the reason is, the children have had access to screens, and now the parents are finding it difficult to take the screens away from the child. What advice would you give to our parents?
Yeah, so Mosun, this is actually common. I would think that we should try not to get to that stage in the first place. It doesn't matter now. If this is an issue now, I want to tell and share with you that actually in my clinical practice, when we do find out that some children have excessive screen time, and we are encouraging parents to work through a plan with us to reduce it. The parents do it successfully. There's no problem around it. 3 hours of screen viewing, when I next review them, it's 1 hour. 1 hour screen viewing in a child who's less than 18 months, I said we stop. They just don't give it anymore. They managed to do it. No big deal, no tantrums or not. Okay, there are some children who actually tantrum around this arrangement. So I would tell parents, from 3 hours, you start cutting to 2 over the week, and slowly, you don't take it away like a cold turkey, right? The child is very evidently very upset, but you slowly cut it. He cannot understand that, oh, actually, I've reduced it over time. And then as you are cutting it, you start to build in the structure, and you start to build in the discipline around it, which is what I covered just now. How you actually structure the time for screen, asking for permission. And many parents actually manage to do it. Now, if your child has very significant tantrums, sometimes we do need to see them under our child development unit, because we need to work with parents, some behavioral expansion strategies. And some children have social, emotional regulation issues in the first place, which make then taking away the screens very hard. And I tell parents, don't view screens like something that's different. It's the same where a child tantrums over a toy. A child tantrums and you say it's raining, it cannot swim, and child cannot understand that, right? So distract the child with something else. Have a list of things that the child likes to do. And when you need to move the child away, and you need to be quite firm about it, be loving and responsive to the child's upset, and say, I'm going to bring you to do this instead, right? And actually, we observe, the doctors know, the screens come out when we don't know what to do with our kids, to be very honest. Or we ourselves are so busy to think about what to do with our kids. So I encourage parents to say, actually, doing this is harder, but in the longer term, we're going to reap better benefits for our kids. So screens can also teach self-regulation and discipline, and start right in the beginning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Prof. Chong. So I think in summary for our parents, just start, right? Just cut a little bit a day. And I think Prof. Chong, through her clinical practice, has seen many successful cases. So it's possible. It would be hard to do the cold turkey straight away. The child might have a tantrum, but start progressively. And if there really are issues, can always approach Child Development Clinic.
That's right.
Yes, and Prof. Chong is one such practitioner. But I think it would be the minority of children who have severe withdrawal syndromes.
That's right.
Yes, but for all parents out there, there's always clinical help if you need it.
That's
Okay,
right.
another question that has come through is that some parents say that childcare centers, they have seen childcare centers use screens
Yeah.
for education purposes. I will take that question because preschools come under my care at the Ministry of Social and Family Development.
Yeah.
So we have guidelines for our preschools as well, and we'll reinforce that, repeat that to our preschools, which is that screens can only be used if they are complementary and they are interactive, and there is educational purpose. So,
Yeah.
for instance, if there is a little sing-along, there is a teacher, you want to encourage the children to sing along, you could have a video that's on with the music that's on, but there is a teacher that's facilitating the engagement with the children. So it is not just a two-dimensional screen left with the child for the child to just mindlessly view the video. So that's not how we encourage our preschool teachers, and those are also not the way we prescribe it in our guidelines. So I just want to reassure our parents that we have guidelines for preschools, and we'll continue to repeat that to our preschool educators. Okay, there are some questions. Prof Chong, you've been talking about quality content online for children. So I think some parents want to know, what are the factors they should look out for when it comes to selecting quality content?
So, more soon, there is, I think when parents look at quality content, some parents ask me, Dr. Chong, this show is good or not? Is this show good? And Dr. Chong is not so young anymore. And I actually don't know what is new. And what is, when my babies were younger, they were watching Teletubbies, for example, right? What I want to tell parents is it's like food. You have really a huge range of different types of delicious food, which is also educational. And one of the things that you can ask yourself is, okay, there is a very useful website called Common Sense Media. I know it's not culturally all Singaporean, but Common Sense Media gives you a review and the parents' review on the show and what is actually recommended for the ratings. So if you have shows coming out from US, UK, you can actually reference the Common Sense Media website. Now, one simple thing to remember is ask if this show is developmentally appropriate, right? And what do I mean? Is the way, the language, and the pictures that coming out from the screen appropriate for the development age of the child? Certainly no violence, no bloodshed, nothing which is very gory or inappropriate, for children. The danger zone is for the school age children, right? Also because sometimes they would be having access on social media pop-ups, things which are very sexual images, images that are inappropriate because they're very adult themed. Those things that parents will have to think about how to prevent that, and you can actually set up some app controls. We try to not encourage shows which are too fast-paced. The reason is because there's still research going on now. There is some initial research that fast-paced videos may affect the attention, but the current research also suggests that there could be more to that. But if you think about it, fast-paced videos actually rapidly changing the screens, and things are darting across the screen. Children's attention capacity is again at stake, so they cannot understand also when things are too fast. So just make sure that what you are viewing, the child actually is appropriate for age. Now, one very easy way to tell is like this: if you have a 3-year-old and you choose a show, ask the child questions on what she's watching. If the child can show that she's enjoying it, like she's dancing to the show, or if you ask, oh my, what is the doggy doing? It's so funny. And you say, what's the dog doing? And the child can tell you, right? Mommy, it's too funny. This is happening. Or that she is consuming the content, she understood it, and she's enjoying it. So those are just some guidelines we have, but we cannot cover every show. And it's impossible to rate or give a rating to every single show under in Singapore, for example, because we have different cultures, we have different races who use different media as well. Yeah.
Prof Chong, just like many parents out there, I myself, when I first saw these slides about 3 years ago, because I've been working very closely with child, I think many parents are like, oh no, I've done damage to my child.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Can I reverse the damage? So there's actually a question from a parent here. If damage is already done, my child
Mm,
has been exposed to screen time before 18 months. If I
mm.
remove screen time now, can I reverse or reduce the damage?
Yeah. You know, mummies and daddies, children continue to grow and develop. Now, we know that there are critical periods in a child's development, right? Now, I just want to encourage you, even the language development, what happens is that the research supports that, and this they looked through a lot of studies. They did find that when children who are very young are exposed to screens, right, the language may be delayed. The reason being what I said just now. But they also found that when the older children started to watch meaningful, good quality content on screen, the language improved. The language improved and the context counts. So parents don't just look at the good or the bad. A lot of factors add together. For example, maybe your child had excessive screen time previously. You've started to cut it, but now you are replacing that with lots of growth promoting, developmentally promoting activities. Like I said, nobody can tell you a precise point where it starts to be safe again or is still in the danger zone, you know what I mean? But the more of the green zone you go towards, the better you would be preventing later onset problems. Yeah. So screen research is also very complex. That the one we tell parents. What we want to tell you is in the early years, what's done, even if you think that it was not great, it's not too late. We can do something about it. The attention capacities of the children develop all the way to 18 years old. And in fact, because it's a very slow developing area, which is this area, the subfrontal, the executive function, we call it, there are possibilities of us using activities and using ways where we can teach the children to start to improve on that. And everything that has, even in a child development unit, we see children with speech delay, we see children with a variety of disorders. We can actually help the child improve. We do. And hence, whatever impact, whatever it is, don't look at it like this, but tell yourself, I'm trying to grow towards more healthy. It's like when you realize that, oh dear, I haven't been exercising, I've eaten too much salt, too much sugar food. What do? You're not diabetic yet. It doesn't matter. Let's do something now. And then we can still prevent the onset of heart disease, and we can still be healthful right after that. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's very reassuring, Prof. Chong. And there is also another question about, sorry, let me just look at it again. Whether or not there is a difference between different types of content, i.e., for instance, cartoons versus real-life documentaries, because we're talking about the different types of content that's available online, right?
Yeah. Okay, my colleagues may have a little bit more knowledge about the research. At this moment, right, like I said, if it's educational enough and the value of the show is in fact present, I don't think we can measure it in this way. Because different types of shows serve different purposes, right? The cartoons are very attractive to children, but because in a very childlike manner, in a manner where they use figures and maybe it's Disney and all, it actually has a way where children are favored to learn from it. Now, whereas things like educational videos and, things which are National Geographic, they have a very different value also, right? They actually show children in real life what things look like. Like I said, some very young children cannot understand National Geographic. Some very old children, including adults, still watch cartoons, but we cannot measure it this way. As long as it is actually of educational value, there is some positive value to it. I don't think that there is a way that the research can say this is better than the other.
Thanks. I'm mindful that we are 9:10 p.m. now. We probably have another 5 more minutes to go before the end of the webinar. A few other questions that have come up is how do we explain to children, toddlers, when actually adults are using the phone? But adults are maybe using the phone for texting, maybe we're using it for communication purposes. But the toddler keeps seeing us play with the phone, so that they think the phone is something that they should play with as well. Do you have any advice to give?
Yes. To a very young child, screen is screen. To the adult, screen used for work and screen used for recreation is different. Now, I want to tell parents that there is a lot of literature out there. The science tells us that the parents as a role model is critically important and it influences the child's screen habits. But unfortunately, it does not discriminate between you scrolling on the phone on your social media versus texting your boss over the email versus using all screen time is screen time. But I think for primary age children, you can probably explain and they understand because they use screens for educational purposes as well. So again, we come back to that concept that it is harder to need to spend time to occupy a child, but all families do need screen-free time. There needs to be a little bit of that discipline around it. But we really, really should build that in so that children learn from very young. When we are at dinner, we don't use screens. When Papa is spending time with you, I try not to use my screens. I'm focusing all on you, and this is our together time. It has other benefits on the social, on the emotional development of the children also. Yeah, so we should.
Prof Chong, I think some of our parents may have children who are in the primary school going age. And some are asking, because earlier you mentioned that if there are some problems that they may be having with their child, say throwing a tantrum and so on and so forth, or emotional regulation, they could see yourself or other colleagues at the child development clinic. Is this also available to primary school going children?
Yes, we actually don't have a regular service to see children of school-going age. Now, we did in the work group on screen guidance, work with MOE colleagues as well. And there were people from the National Addiction Management.
Yes, NAMS.
NAMS, that's right. So one thing we need to cover just very briefly is a lot of parents come to me and say, Dr. Chong, my child is addicted to screens, already addicted. So we use the word addiction a bit freely, but actually in the Bible of psychiatric disorders, actually very interestingly, they recognize gaming as an addiction, a behavioral addiction. But the funny thing is the addiction we're talking about is actually addiction to the smartphone itself. You could be doing online shopping, you could be texting, watching movies, right? It's not gaming. So is it addiction or not? So now people have moved towards a concept where it's called problematic screen use. Okay. Now, so parents, problematic screen use has a few of these types of characteristics, and people research on it, but I can just quickly explain to you now. There is so much preoccupation on the screen at the expense of everything else. They need to do more and more of this, like social media. They need to be more and more involved in it, and the frequency of it increases. And if they don't do it, something happens to the mood. Yeah. They have a bit of that withdrawal where their unpleasant emotions come, but when they're on it, they are actually very, very happy. And conflict or arguments start when you try to negotiate with the child. And then, the problems, which is ignoring schoolwork, ignoring the home duties and all. And actually, our mental health colleagues also use a smartphone addiction scale. And they found that actually quite a lot of youths have met some features on the smartphone addiction scale. Okay, this is not to tell everybody to rush to the NAMS or the clinic. But it just tells us that if you look at these features and you're starting to notice that this is happening to yourself or to your team, we should start that conversation and maybe get the teachers to help to participate in coming up with some way where we can speak to our teenager or a school-age child about this. So start from the family front first. Don't go straight to the specialist. But children with significant behavioral or oppositional or aggressive behaviors and severe neglect of their schoolwork, they do need to see a clinician. Yeah.
So, Prof Chong, I think what's important is that we talk about screen use, but like what you said, right? People are using screens for different purposes.
Yes.
So if we find that our child is spending too much time on the screen, we may want to first find out what is the child spending time on the screen on. Are they watching videos, like, for example, maybe some drama serial or whatsoever? That's one form, right? Or a child could be gaming, like you said. Or a child could be spending a lot of time on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, or a child may be just using it for WhatsApp and texting, classmates group chat or something. So for the parent, it might be useful for the parent to first find out what is the child spending so much time on the phone, what are they using the phone for, and then to see whether or not what they're using that phone for is that problematic. So are they actually using it to communicate with someone else? Or are they just watching, like treating it as like a TV substitute? Or is it social media? Because there was a question in the Q&A about problematic social media harms.
Yes.
But that may not be the entire universe, of what the child is using the screen for.
Yes.
So I think first and foremost, parents must first understand what the child is using the screen for. And like you said, perhaps start from the family dynamics, the family perspective, to see how to move the child towards lesser use of the screen. And depending on the age of the child, for a teenage child, we might need to engage in some conversation, engagement, negotiation, perhaps even. For primary school going children, I think you said that one could try to do it gradually, and the same for toddlers.
Yes.
And also, depending on the age of the child, you could also seek clinical help when necessary. Right?
Correct.
But you do think that the clinical part of it is probably forming a minority of the cases that you see.
Yes, that's right. And also one important thing is for older children. So when I was on video talking about screen use, I could tell parents, the other way, the MMM I talked about is one way of remembering it. ABC is also another way. Make sure it's active. Active means it's meaningful, engaging, educational. B is balance. Right? There's a balance when you look at all the activities that the child needs to do in a whole day. Don't just go for the strict duration, but is it balanced with other things? And maybe today you had a bit more screen time, balance it out. The weekend you go outdoors, right? The C, one parent says, it's control, yes. I think control is one way we can do it for young kids. You are controlling the media and the screen, but for older kids, the C stands for collaborate. Yeah. Collaborate has a connotation of understanding why children or teenagers need their phones. You cannot just take it away from them because maybe the teacher is trying to communicate. Maybe some of them really want to chat with their friends. Maybe there is a reason why they need to be connected, right? Maybe they're not doing it in the right way. Maybe the social media activity is excessive. Yes. But don't just be draconian and spoil the relationship between parent and child. Collaborate and start, like you say, from the family front. Have a nice chat with your teen. And nowadays, teenagers are very very lovely. They can think, and they can also say that the schools are teaching them this way is harmful, this way is healthier. They may actually get your point of view, and they can work with you to start to reduce the screen time that is not so meaningful.
Thank you, Prof Chong. I think on that note, we probably addressed some of the major questions that have come through. So thank you to everyone who participated in tonight's webinar, and a special thanks to Prof Shang Chee for sharing your invaluable insight and expertise. So dear parents, as the exams approach, please try to be there for our children and remind them also that whatever the outcome, it does not define their total self-worth. So let us try to be encouraging towards them. And like what Prof Chong said, when it comes to screen time use, let's look at how we can have a collaborative approach with our children, particularly those who are in their teenage years, to see how we can work with them to curb problematic screen use while reaping the benefits of learning through screen time and through technology as well. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Please fill up the post-event survey form as you leave the webinar. The chat room is now open, and we'd like to invite you to leave your comments in the chat room. Thank you, everyone, and please follow Child as well as Suncare SG on their social media web pages to be updated on the latest event and activities. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you, and good night.